Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome in, boys and girls, to the Wild and Wacky Wednesday edition of Main Street Sports Today, where we are presented, as always, by our friends at the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Wade Neely sitting in the saddle alongside my good friend Calvin White. And Calvin, we don't get to pair up very often on a Wild and Wacky Wednesday. And it's been a while since I've even been on one of these fine midweek shows in this capacity. So I'm pumped. I'm excited. Things are going to be weird, kind of wild and wacky, you might say. But I'm excited nonetheless. Good to see you, my man.
Yeah, it's good to see you. I've gotten used to, over the past couple months filling out the Wild and Wacky for David. The first time I ever did it, he said this was it was a segment that was tailor made for you. So excited to see what you come up with at the end of the show.
I don't know whether that was intended as a compliment, an insult, or both. I'm going to take it as a more so the compliment for sure. But yeah, pumped for Wild and Wacky Wednesday. We close each and every single Wednesday show with the weirdest, wildest, and wackiest news. We even try and bring you something. We do it across the globe, of course, but we even try and bring you something from the state of Florida as well. No guarantees on that today, but you never know as we get into it. Calvin, we got a big show lined up today. Producer Mark Rogers will be guiding us through it behind the scenes, making all the magic happen. We're going to talk college basketball. You and Mo were on the program yesterday. A chock-full slate on Tuesday night. Nice slate on Tuesday night. And a lot of those games delivered. And to help kind of navigate those waters, our good friend and Main Street Media colleague, Joe Sullivan, will join us in the 3 o'clock hour for an update on local hoops, an update on national hoops. And he made mention he wants to revisit a topic from his previous engagement on this show where we talked about National Player of the Year. I don't know where he's going to take that. That's part of the national or the wild and wacky nature, I guess, of today. But he has apparently formulated some new thoughts on his National Player of the Year consideration since his last visit. So looking forward to having Joe join us in hour number 2. Also, hour number 2, we'll get into the grab bag. Lots of NFL and NCAA football news and notes to break down, including a local. Just when we thought we were safe, Calvin, with coach firings, that might be true at the Division I level, at the FBS level. But there's a local firing of a notable local name that we want to make mention of. You're going to want to stick around for that coming up in the grab bag. Also, sounds like some sad news coming out of NSC. More on that later as we fill you guys in hour number 2. Inside this first hour, TSSAA state football playoffs resume. Calvin, the latest that I saw, there does not appear to be any Thursday games. There certainly don't appear to be any Saturday games at the moment. And the weather for Friday looks fantastic. So I figured we'd throw in a little high school football chatter later on in this first hour today.
Yeah, thankfully we're going to avoid the weather that we got last week and, where we had half the playoffs moved to Thursday. And thankfully, I don't think any of us had any games moved to Saturday, which was worst case scenario, I would assume. So we're, heading into the second round and a couple more weeks of playoff football.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm with you. I was praying. I was just, my teeth were chattering, and not from the cold, but they were thinking about, if there's a chance some of these games get moved to Saturday. But luckily that didn't happen to too many schools. Certainly didn't happen to a lot of schools in our coverage areas. But it looks like, fingers crossed, we'll be in for a big night of Friday night high school football as round 2 of the state playoffs continues. Coming up in just a matter of moments, folks, we'll talk football at the NFL level. Our good friend David BOCLAIR of the Nashville Banner is going to pop by. We'll talk about the Titans coming out of their bye week. They got the Houston Texans, who had a wild and wacky Wednesday edition of their own victory on Sunday as they pulled a rabbit out of the hat late versus the Jaguars to win. David's going to break down the goodies to come out of that matchup on Sunday. We'll also talk other NFL news and notes. We got a lot to get into. It's going to be a big show. It's going to be an action-packed show. And Calvin, we sit here smack dab in the middle of the week, setting the deck for everybody else the rest of the week. Tomorrow, it'll be Mo and David holding down the radio dials there, as it were. Friday, David's going to fill in for Mo because Mo has I don't know if he is a glutton for punishment, if he did this to himself. I want to kind of pick his brain later on because he's going to be traveling west, about as far west as you can go, heading over to Memphis on Friday night for one of those playoff games that you mentioned. So yours truly and David will hold down the fort on Friday. I don't have that in me to go that far, Calvin. So kudos to Mo for making the trip, whether it was self-inflicted or not, I suppose, right?
Yeah, kudos to him. He's a Sports Writers Association Hall of Famer for a reason, I guess. But when duty calls, you got to pick up the phone.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
thankfully, half of my teams are at home or at least close by, and not 3 hours away.
Yeah, and more on that later too, because it's interesting. Most of my teams have been eliminated as well. I tell you what, I'm going to save that because I got a funny anecdote there for later. But that's kind of the setting of the table, as it were, for this big show lined up today. As we mentioned, Wade Neely sitting in the saddle alongside Calvin White with our producer, Mark Rogers. And as we turn our attention to producer Mark Rogers, if you would be so kind, my friends, let's bring the folks yesterday's results. Let's give them tonight's schedule. Producer Mark, let's hit the rundown.
This is the Rundown.
To the rundown we go, boys and girls. And again, light slate last night, but we do have some scores to bring you guys, all of them hardwood related. As we start with women's college basketball, it was Tennessee Tech knocking off MTSU. Big win for Tennessee Tech there last night. 63-54 was your final. UT Southern slipping by rival Cumberland University with a 65-62 win. Trevecca, not as close. They defeated Fisk last night, 80-37. Men's basketball, UNC Asheville 69, Lipscomb 64. It was TSU trouncing Oakwood out of Huntsville, Alabama, 114-76. Calvin, I stayed up late to watch this one last night, partner. Wyoming with a 79-65 win on Austin Peay. More on that with Joe in the second hour, I suppose. But stayed up late. Had to download the Mountain West Network digital app. Didn't even know that was a thing, but I found myself downloading and watching it last night. Credit to the Cowboys on getting a big win there. Again, 79-65. UT Southern, they blew the doors off of Welch College last night at the Curry Athletic Complex, 98-67. UT Southern winning a women's game and a men's game in convincing fashion. NBA action last night, speaking of convincing victories, not a convincing victory for the Memphis Grizzlies, but it was a nice win for the Knicks as New York defeats Memphis last night, 133-120.
Tonight's women's basketball schedule, Shea Ralph and the Vanderbilt Commodores travel to Clarksville to play Austin Peay. Tip-off for that one is at 6 p.m. at F&M Bank Arena. Tennessee State is traveling down to TCU for a 6:30 tip. In men's basketball action, North Florida travels to Knoxville to take on Rick Barnes and the Vols for a 6 p.m. tip-off. MTSU is in Evansville tonight taking on the Purple Aces. Tip-off for that is at 7 p.m. Make sure to listen to our friend Chip Walters on the Blue Raider Network. Eastern Kentucky travels to Nashville to take on Mark Byington and the Vanderbilt Commodores for a 7 p.m. tip-off on the SEC Network. And in the NBA, the Grizzlies travel north up to TD Garden to take on the Boston Celtics for a 6:30 p.m. tip-off. Ladies and gentlemen, those were your scores. That was your schedule. And that concludes today's rundown.
That brings us into top story time, ladies and gentlemen. And each and every single day, our top story is brought to you by the fine folks at Piggly Wiggly over at Neely's Mill in Columbia. Open from 11 a.m. until 6 p.m. Make sure that you check them out for your delicious daily deli lunch options, where they also offer hand-cut meats and everything costs plus 10% at the cash register. Once again, Piggly Wiggly, Neely's Mill in Columbia, presenting our top story. Really can't go too deep into the show without mentioning college football playoff rankings, the selection committee dumping version 2.0 on us last night, Calvin. Producer Mark has got the graphic fired up there. And as you can see, there are some changes, but not a lot at the top. We find Ohio State ranked first yet again, Indiana number 2, Texas A&M 3, Alabama 4, Georgia rounds out your top 5. 6 through 10, Texas Tech, Ole Miss, Oregon, Notre Dame, and Texas. You get beyond number 10, though, Calvin, and that's where things kind of start getting interesting. BYU and Utah, two schools with no love lost, obviously, sitting there at 12 and 13. I guess Texas and Oklahoma there at 10 and 11, too. But one school of note that we do want to, well, two, I suppose, to this program. Vanderbilt sitting there right on the cusp of things yet again, not completely out, not completely in, but they sit there at 14th. And we also see the University of Tennessee, the Vols are ranked 23rd. USF and Cincinnati are your 24th and 25th ranked teams. Calvin, I didn't watch the reveal live. You know, I used to kind of really enjoy this, and then it kind of dawned on me, you know, the last one is really the only one that truly ultimately matters. So why am I sitting here kind of devoting some time to this? But the rankings do come out, and as a result, we do see, you know, a lot of familiar names at the top with those unbeatens there in Ohio State, Indiana, and Texas A&M. But we kind of get that picture dialed into focus just a little bit more with this version 2.0 that was unveiled last night.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be that much shakeup at the top the rest of the year, you know, even though there's only a couple games left. And Mo and I talked about this yesterday with Elena Morris. When you talk about Vanderbilt, you know, with games against Kentucky and Tennessee left, there's not really an opportunity to, you know, pick up a huge win that will bump you up firmly into the top 12. So Vandy's going to need a little bit of help from some of the teams in front of them, you know, whether that's, you know, them losing or winning. But Vandy's going to need a little bit of help. I think just about everybody would agree that Tennessee's firmly out of the picture at this point with 3 losses. But, you know, Ohio State's probably going to finish undefeated again, unless something, you know, drastic happens. I told David, I think 2 weeks ago or last week maybe when the first ranking came out, I think Ohio State's going to win the national championship again.
It pains me to hear you say that, by the way.
I know, but deep down, I'm rooting for an Indiana Vanderbilt national championship game just because I think that would be funny.
Now, that would be iconic in a number of different capacities, right?
It's not lining up to look like that right now, but you know, I would also like to see Indiana make a legit run. You know, after last year, they kind of introduced themselves and got bounced by Notre Dame in the opening round. So I think everybody would tell you that this year's Indiana team is like actually legit and they're better than last year's Indiana team. So I'd like to see Kurt Signetti and the Hoosiers make a little bit of a run.
I'm with you, and you know, I've been on record too saying this on this show as well. It pains me as a Michigan fan to say this, but I think this Ohio State team is better than the one that won it all last year. Now, obviously, things can change. I don't know if my Michigan boys have the goods to knock off OSU this year. It just feels like enough's enough, and luck is eventually going to run out on them. They weren't supposed to win last year by any means, so not banking on a win there. So it does feel like Ohio State and Indiana are on a collision course to meet in the Big Ten championship game. Speaking of which, Calvin, that kind of, you know, these are the actual rankings. NCAA.com has produced what the matchups would look like if they were to be slotted today based off these rankings. Your top 4 seeds obviously would be Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, and Alabama. But this is where the fun kind of gets into it. And if these projections were to hold again, which they won't, but if they were, your 5-12 matchup, South Florida, yes, the Bulls would be visiting Georgia in that 12-5 game. At the top of that bracket, this to me seems like an electric first-round matchup. Notre Dame would travel to Oregon. And for all the talk about Notre Dame, should they or shouldn't they be in, one heck of a way to potentially start if they were to travel to Oregon in that opening round. Texas at Ole Miss. Make of that what you will. Could be fun. If Texas gets in, that means they have won either versus Georgia or Texas A&M down the stretch, so they wouldn't be playing with a lot of confidence. So that could be a fun one. And then your final potential first-round matchup would be Miami at Texas Tech. These are all interesting. These are all kind of in flux. Calvin, one thing does seem kind of for sure, unless, you see USC there at 17 and Michigan is 18. But unless something happens with USC, really, or unless Michigan just runs the table and beats Ohio State, it feels like the Big Ten is only going to get those 3 teams with Indiana, Ohio State, and Oregon. And in a down year, obviously, for the Big 12 in terms of bids, who the heck knows what the ACC is going to look like. this is going to be an SEC dominant field in terms of just sheer number of teams, whether a squad like Vanderbilt gets in there or not. It feels like they're going to be right there in the mix, but this will be a SEC loaded 12-team playoff, it feels like right now.
Yeah, it's gotten that way over the last couple of years in football and basketball. I think a lot of people would tell you that a mid-tier SEC team could beat a lot of the top-tier teams in other conferences. Now, probably not, Ohio State or anybody, but, teams, kind of hanging out in the middle of the SEC like Texas and Oklahoma could probably beat, some of your Oregons and Indianas potentially. But it's going to be SEC loaded just because the SEC spends the entire conference schedule beating up on itself. A little bit of cannibalism, just beating each other week in and week out. We got used to Georgia dominating the conference over the last couple of years, and now Alabama's. I never thought we'd say that Alabama's made a resurgence after what we're used to seeing out of them. Even last year they were really good, but they didn't make the playoff. Kalen DeBoer's got a really good team that's, looks like they're national championship good. Georgia's always national championship good under Kirby Smart. Vanderbilt might sneak in there if they get a little bit of help. So it's going to be SEC loaded and potentially create some interesting first-round matchups.
I think you're right. You mentioned Oklahoma, by the way. They are the proverbial first team left out in this case. Despite being ranked 11th, you got to factor in that conference championship component. This does project Miami. Again, these are from NCAA.com as your fourth highest ranked conference champ. And again, I am out of the business of trying to figure out what the heck is going to happen in the ACC. We talked with Michael Felder on Monday, and he said your guess is as good as mine as well. I mean, Duke is even still alive in that league. I mean, it feels like anyone could win it. There's even an argument that could be made that maybe the ACC champ, and we see that in these projections, they're likely not even going to get a first round bye, right? I mean, we're talking about one of the quote unquote top four conferences, but the season has just not gone any way, shape, form, or fashion of overall success. So a school like Miami, school like Georgia Tech, Virginia maybe by the wayside now, Louisville in that same boat. All these schools are kind of falling. South Florida is your fifth-ranked highest conference champion. And so that, to me, is going to be the fun component of this, Calvin. I don't know, especially, when I see USF at Georgia on a sheet of paper at the 12-5 matchup. I just can't – I have a hard time visualizing, seeing them going on and getting a win like that. Whether it's them, North Texas, I'm rooting for James Madison down the stretch. Who knows, whoever it is. It would be neat to see in terms of just chaos and parity, but I don't know that 12-5, whoever it is, if presumably the group of five selection has got the goods. But that is, to me, still kind of the fun drama down the stretch that we have here is who's going to get that proverbial 12 bid.
Yeah, the 12-team format has, created some interesting matchups in the first round. South Florida, I think, would be fun to see in the playoff until, if that holds true, they look up on the Jumbotron and they say, congratulations, you had a really good season. You have to go play the Georgia Bulldogs on the road. And we've seen it over the last 5-6 years. Georgia does not lose at home. It's like an impossibility. I know they lost at home this year. It broke like a 6-year streak, but that was to Alabama. And
yeah, so school's not named Alabama. They got a pretty good track record at home, right?
Yeah, Kirby Smart's got a pretty good little thing going down there in Athens. So it would be cool to see a team like South Florida in the playoff. It would be good for that program, obviously, but that would be pretty open and closed having to go play Georgia on the road.
Yeah, so those are your top 25 rankings. Again, we'll have a couple more batches of these before things really, really kind of get finalized here. And that's the thing, too. It's fun for us. It's fun for me and Calvin and, producer Mark and Mo and David and Sports Talk hosts at large across the country to pontificate and bloviate and kind of examine and analyze these situations. But a lot of it is going to play itself out. Everybody that has questions about Texas, guess what? They're at two huge games. Georgia, and Texas A&M. And if they win one of those, they're realistically in. If they lose both, they're realistically out. And that opens up the doors for a team like Vanderbilt, et cetera, maybe a BYU to sneak in, or Utah. So all that being said, fun to talk about now, fun to speculate now. Helps us fill some time on this good old-fashioned sports talk program. But what it does is largely going to be decided by these coaches and players on the field in the next couple of weeks. So there you have it, folks. Thanks to producer Mark for popping up that top 25. And, man, I was rooting, Calvin. I was rooting for Iowa to knock off Oregon this weekend just to see everybody's heads explode when we talked about the putrid Iowa Hawkeyes offense somehow realistically being involved in a legitimate playoff discussion. We were robbed of that with that late Oregon field goal, but I digress. It's going to be fun as we come down the stretch. I'm telling you, folks, especially in that group of five, as we get ready to get towards the halfway mark here in the month of November. Calvin and I are going to take a quick break, folks. When we come back, we will talk football. We'll shift gears, though. We'll talk a little NFL. The Titans are back at home. There's obviously some bad. We'll try and see if we can, pluck a little good out of the Titans beat from David BOCLAIR of the Nashville Banner. But we'll also talk other NFL headlines and pick his brain on other Nashville-based sporting topics. So stick around, folks. David BOCLAIR of the Nashville Banner will join us after this time out here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by TOA of Columbia.
Closer. All new Sportsbook, the latest gaming machines, live horse racing, and more. The Mid Gaming Hall, Kentucky Downs.
Winning just got closer.
This holiday season, the largest lantern festival in the country returns to Nashville Zoo. Experience more than 1,000 all-new handcrafted lanterns, towering creatures, magical worlds, and a North Pole village. At the center of it all, the Smashville Ice Rink. Welcome back to Zoolumination at Nashville Zoo. Bigger, brighter, and better than ever.
Busy bee, yeah, busy bee. If you need...
Hold on, y'all, hold on. I need to make a call. Hey, this is Brianna with Busy Bee. I'm giving you a call to let you know your technician is on his way.
3-3.
Bee, oh, busy bee. Guys, not yet. Not yet.
Busy bee, oh,
Now
busy
ready,
bee.
guys.
Call 775-7833.
Custom Stone Handlers supplies over 600 distributors and suppliers with quality stone products. Along with Riverstone, we produce and distribute over 100 building, landscape, and other bulk products. Our goal is to provide quality products, service, and partnerships to ensure our customers' success. We firmly believe the measure of any person or company is how you treat other people and customers. Give them a call at 931-490-4990 or visit CustomStoneHandlers.com.
Welcome back, folks. You are watching and listening to Main Street Sports Today, presented each and every single afternoon by our friends at the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Alongside Calvin White and producer Mark Rogers, Wade Neely saying hello. Calvin, NFL season has, we talked about the playoff rankings for the college football playoff just a moment ago, but it always makes me a little sad, and then also, man, where did the time go type situation when you have high school football playoffs going on. We're knee-deep in playoff projections for college football. But in the blink of an eye, we're already on the back half of the NFL schedule now, which is saying something considering they basically play 40 games a season now. So, I mean, time has flown by, and we're going to be joined in just a matter of moments by our friend David BOCLAIR of the Nashville Banner. But, Calvin, as we enter the back half of the season, it has certainly not been great in any stretch of the imagination for the Tennessee Titans. And, you know, that's why I wanted to pick David's brain, because I'm curious your thoughts. What, if anything, outside of just maybe pure talent evaluation, are you kind of doing out here in this second half under an interim head coach on a hapless franchise?
Yeah, and that's kind of been the thought process ever since, you know, the first couple of weeks. After the first 2 or 3 games, I mean, everybody was pretty much on the same page that the Titans were not much, if any, better than last year, and that they were, you know, pretty obviously one of the worst teams in the NFL. And now with wins by the Saints and the Jets last week, the Titans are in the driver's seat again for the number 1 pick. And I'd imagine that if they, you know, do end up with the number 1 pick, they would do the sensible thing and trade it away and just load up on as many picks as you can get, unless there's just an absolute can't miss prospect at number 1. But I'm not sure there is this year, and the Titans need help everywhere. So as many picks as they can get to load up on players is going to be helpful. But we've talked about this before. The front office has not given anybody any indication that they are capable of drafting successfully and keeping players on the team and developing them to where they're actually serviceable players to actually make the team better.
Yeah, you're right. And, you know, that was a topic that Mo and I kind of broached. I guess it was on Monday's show maybe, or maybe it was Friday as we entered the Titans bye week. You know, he was kind of laughing at me already referencing Tankathon, and the topic became, well, what do you expect the Titans to do with the number 1 pick if they were to get it? And I said, man, they have so many holes that even if you're almost at the spot where even if there's a bona fide superstar, obviously you feel, you know, you're going to at least give Ward some more time to develop. But even if there's this elite guy out there, and I threw out Reuben Bain from Miami, if there's an elite player, you still have so many other holes. You might still be better off considering trading that number 1 pick and going from there. So never good when you're already talking, what should we maybe do with the number 1 draft pick? And we haven't even got to Thanksgiving yet. You know, we were having this discussion before Halloween even, which makes it even worse. But that was a little bit of a preamble, serving basically as nothing else, if nothing more than an intro for our good friend from the Nashville Banner, David BOCLAIR, who is gracious enough to hop on board with us. David, good afternoon. How you doing?
I'm great, Wade. How are you guys doing today?
We're great. Thanks for taking some time with us. And David, Calvin and I were pontificating here. It's never good when you have discussions about, are we going to get the number 1 pick? And if so, what should we do with that number 1 pick before the turkeys even got brought out for Thanksgiving dinner yet?
Yeah, and you think about it this way too. The Titans might be the only team to manage to come out of their open date in a worse situation than they were going in, right? I mean, they with the Saints and the Jets both winning, the Titans are now the only team in the NFL with 1 loss. You know, you figure at least in that bye week, nothing bad is going to happen, and yet somehow, you know, here are the Titans this year. It's hard to look at that schedule and say, yeah, here's a game they probably could win. I mean, the way things have gone, and you just look at that last game against the Chargers, right? You score a touchdown on an interception return and a touchdown on a punt return in the same game. You should win. I mean, those are the kinds of things. I went back and looked at it over the last 20 years in the NFL. Teams that have scored both those ways were 25-3 before the Titans managed to lose that one too. I mean, it's just this. This team. It took a colossal meltdown by the Arizona Cardinals for them to win. In answer to your question, it's not too early to start thinking about the number 1 pick with this team because I mean, they're locked into that position right now, and I'm hard pressed to see them getting out of it, quite honestly.
Yeah, you don't necessarily paint the rosiest of pictures when you talk about the schedule. Still got some tough games, including one versus Houston, who's on the cusp of rejuvenating their season. But David, I do want to ask you, as the resident Jets fan on this show, and I can't believe I'm admitting that publicly, but there was a topic after their win this week over the Browns that a lot of folks internally said, hey, we don't care about the rest of the season. We don't care about the draft pick. That was a win we needed for culture. And I could maybe buy that with a first-year head coach like Aaron Glenn, but where the Titans are, what is the kind of motivation or what is kind of the goal, I guess, of the team in your mind over these next 2 months?
I don't know. I mean, I would have thought, honestly, with the trade deadline that they would have and probably should have made more deals. Now, that's not to say they didn't try and maybe they didn't get what they were looking for, but you've changed coaches or you fired your head coach. You've got a guy in Mike McCoy who is clearly not a guy you're going to consider for that job beyond this season. So, that's out of the equation, unlike in 2015 when Mike Mularkey was undoubtedly, I mean, part of that move was made to give Mike Mularkey a bit of a run-up because he was going to be a prime candidate going into that offseason anyway. So, I mean, I think if you're the Titans, you should have done as much as you could. Who the hell cares if you get beat by 10 points every game remaining or 20 points every game remaining, whatever. They should have tried to, in my opinion, collect more draft picks and set themselves up for a big haul or a bunch of trades, that sort of thing that way, because there's just nothing right now compelling about this team that you say, okay, this is outside of Cam Ward, where you say, we've got to build around this guy. Well, okay, the way you do that is you surround him with as much young talent as you possibly can. Let this team all grow up together, and you look at what the Jets did, for example, trading Sauce Gardner and Quentin Williams. Those are two really good football players, but they got an awful lot in return in terms of, what is it, 3 first-round picks and a second-round pick. I think with all that, to me, Titans should have traded Jeffrey Simmons. I don't know that Jeffrey Simmons is going to be any better ever than he's been the first part of this year. By the time 2 or 3 years down the road, when if all goes really, really well and you're finally a good team, he's going to be 30, 31 years old. He's probably going to be fading at that point. It seems like his value to this team right now was greater to me as a trade chip than it would be trying to hang on to him and see what you can do going forward that way. So I think they missed an opportunity. I think you're right. Aaron Glenn is trying to build something there that, they're in that first step of the process. The Titans are they're just a scrap heap right now. And until they get a new coach in here and get some more draft picks next year, they're just biding their time to the finish, basically.
Again, not a rosy picture, but
No.
we'll try and bring it a little burst of positivity here in a second. We promise, folks. But David, one other thing that you did mention that I am fascinated or curious by, you mentioned the idea that maybe trade offers were sent, but not necessarily received. And I'm curious, is that something you have for sure heard, or is those kind of just rumblings? Because to me, I don't want to get absolutely raked over the coals on a bad trade necessarily. So I'm willing to maybe give the Titans brass a little credit if they said, no, we're not going to just take something for nothing,
Yeah, I mean, Mike Morganzi said last week they talked to 31 other teams in the league. I mean, I'm sure they had all kinds of discussions about all kinds of players. Ultimately, it's guys like Chigo Conquo, for example, that's interesting to me. He's Chig's a good player. He hasn't been a great player. He's in the 4th year of his contract. He'll be a free agent after this year. You drafted Gunnar Helm, who's a different kind of tight end, who seems like he's what the front office favors right now. So, I mean, are they going to make a big run at re-signing Chigo Okonkwo this offseason, or are they or do they expect him to leave in free agency? Because if they expect him to leave, why wouldn't you have traded him? Why wouldn't you get something for him? Again, you can find somebody off the practice squad or off somebody else's practice squad or bring him in off the street. Maybe they're not as good as Chigo Okonkwo, but they'll get you through the rest of the season, and at least that way you get something. A guy like Kevin Zeitler, who's been in the league for 14 years at right guard. He's another one. Now, maybe he's planning on retiring after this year, but if he's planning on playing another year on a 1-year contract as he's doing this year, chances are he's gonna want to do it with a team that looks like it's got a pretty good chance of going to the playoffs. So, why wouldn't you have sent him off somewhere if that's going to be the case? And again, maybe he's just planning on retiring and said, "Look, I'm here. I don't want to move in the middle of the season." I don't know either way, but there's several guys like that you think, well, if you weren't going to, if you're not going to do the huge move with Simmons, okay, maybe he's going to be a dominant player for the next 3 or 4 years, and I'm going to be wrong about that. But these guys who are in the contract year, who unless you're bound and determined to make sure they don't leave this offseason, I think it would have made sense to get something for those guys and try and pile up draft picks for next year.
David, you talk about stockpiling the draft picks, and obviously that's the easiest way to rebuild your team is through the draft. But, with the history of dysfunction in ownership in the front office, what reason have they given anybody to think that they can actually go in there and have a successful draft and have players that they can develop into serviceable members of the team?
Well, I mean, there have been good drafts, right? The Jeffrey Simmons, AJ Brown, that was a good draft. They haven't had any good ones since. They're on their third general manager in 5 years now. Mike Borgonzi, it feels like I'm sure he feels like he's pretty confident in what he's doing. In fact, he talked about it last week too. He thinks that this year's draft class has a chance to make a real impact. Now, of course, that's his first draft class. He's not going to say anything but that. But that being said, you look at Jim DK and Alec Ioman, our 4th round picks who are producing at a pretty high level on offense, and in DK's case on special teams. You've got Cam Ward, who's played every snap on offense. Has it been great? No, it hasn't been great, but he's gaining a lot of experience that way. Your 3rd round pick, Kevin Winston, a safety, looks like he's ready and healthy, and they're gonna give him a good long look here over the second half of the season. Now that he's kind of ready to go and gotten a little taste of NFL action, you got the later round guys like a Jackson Slater. Looks like at the very least he's going to be the next Corey Levin, a guy who could be a backup in this league for a long time, maybe a starter, an okay starter at some point. So, there's this draft class. You say, okay, it's a good start. He has to stack classes, like we said. After John Robinson was unable to do that. Rand Carthen, his 2 tries didn't produce much. If you're going to do this through the draft, and the Titans have said they're going to do it through the draft, you have to be getting 3, 4, 5 good players out of every draft class 3, 4, 5 years in a row. And the only way we'll know if they can do it or not is to see what number one, you need to give Mike Borgonzi a good long run at it, like Rand Carthen didn't have, and number 2, we got to see how it pans out over time.
If they do end up with the number 1 pick, obviously I think there's so many holes on the team. I think the general consensus from everybody would be, trade it and stock up on your picks. But I also don't think that there's a surefire number 1 pick that can come in and make, be a game changer for a team immediately. Do you see a situation where if the Titans did end up with the number 1 pick, they could potentially keep it?
Yeah, I think with the number 1 pick, obviously, anything is on the table at that point. If there is if there's a guy that you think is absolutely a difference maker, whether it's a guy who can rush the passer, or a cornerback who is going to be one of those guys you can just put on an island and let him do his thing, or maybe you think there's a wide receiver who is so skilled and fits so perfectly with Cam Ward that you don't risk moving back. You think you can't afford to risk at least moving back and waiting to see if that person will be there. I think in the Titans case, though, it would be more likely that they do trade that pick, just because they need so many things. Isn't this what you guys were talking about when I got on here? They need so many things. It's not like you say, okay, we have to have a wide receiver with our first round pick because we're short there and we need to pair him with Cam Ward and these other two young guys, and that'll set us up with something like what Green Bay has done in recent years. I mean, it could be virtually. I mean, this team could go offensive line again in the first round, and no one would say they didn't need to try that. It could be wide receiver, it could be cornerback, it could be edge rusher, it could be linebacker. I mean, there's so many needs on this team right now that you might as well trade it, collect a couple of picks, and see what you can do. I mean, you can think back to the 2016 draft when John Robinson did that, right? Traded from 1 to 15 and then traded back up to number 8 to select Jack Conklin. Conklin was an All-Pro a couple times, and that worked out really well. Ended up with 3 second-round picks in that draft. The first 2, I guess that was Kevin Dodd and Austin Johnson, didn't work out great, but the third of those picks was Derrick Henry. Obviously worked out great, and I think that's illustrative of what happens in the draft, right? You want to give yourself the most chances to hit on players. So even the second round is a bit of a crapshoot. So if you can turn a deal where you get multiple picks in the second round, you give yourself a better chance to find a guy like a Derrick Henry there. Then you got Kevin Byard in the third round that year. So ultimately you had 5 picks in the first 3 rounds. 3 of them turned out to be really good players. That's that's a pretty good formula if you can replicate it this time around.
David, what you just described is when I bring my camera to the high school football games on Friday.
Yeah.
I'm not a photographer, but if I shoot 2,000 photos, I'm bound to at least get 1 or 2. So if the Titans can just accumulate the volume of picks, you're eventually going to hopefully hit on at least a couple there. So I kind of smell what you're stepping in there. David, I did want to ask you too. It has been over a full year since the Titans have won a home game. Got to go back to that. It's just crazy to think about. Got to go back to that OT win versus New England, in early November last year. If the Titans are set to get a home win versus the Texans, number one, are they capable in your mind? And number 2, how do they need to go about it? What does the game flow need to look like in your opinion?
Well, certainly it needs to look completely different than it looked the first time they played the Texans this year.
Right?
26-0. It was Cam Ward's worst game. It was the first game after Brian Callahan gave up play calling duties. I feel pretty confident that Amy Adams Strunk wanted to fire Brian Callahan probably after that game, and Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi talked her off the ledge and bought him a couple of more weeks. But it didn't. Houston. You mentioned it at the top. Houston. It was a huge Sunday for Houston a couple days ago, and that they were down 19 to Jacksonville in the fourth quarter, came back and won that game, and they are now one of 6 teams in the AFC that are either 5-4 or 4-5, sort of battling it out for right now what would be the last playoff spot in that conference, and they are at 4-5. Jacksonville is at 5-4 as a result of that game. So if Houston had lost that game, it would be much different. They are coming in here, though, I would think, with a ton of good feeling, a ton of momentum off that game, and we'll have to wait and see who plays quarterback for them. But it's going to be a really tall order for the Titans to answer the level of emotion and confidence that I think Houston's going to be bringing in here. And when we were talking earlier about what this team has to play for, you look at, I think part of the problem too is Mike McCoy has been so conservative at points. And, we saw we saw the moment in Indianapolis when he elected to punt on Indianapolis's side of the field in the third quarter. I think it was, Titans were trailing, and Cam Ward hated the decision and looked at him and said, "Go for it." And Mike McCoy even admitted after, or the day after, that that was one he probably should have made a different decision. But that's one of that, like, that's something, if you're Mike McCoy, you need to be thinking about that. This team has, this team's not playing for the playoffs. Yes, they're pros. Yes, they're gonna show up and they're gonna practice and they're gonna compete. But in those moments when games get hard and tough and physical, are they gonna have that extra whatever it takes to succeed in those moments? And if Mike McCoy's not doing things to make it fun and exciting and daring and doing something in some way to inspire these guys, then they're not going to achieve in those moments. And so I think if Mike McCoy keeps coaching the way he's been coaching, it only hurts the Titans' chances to win one of these games. I mean, they've got 3 straight at home here, and they got to get one of them at some point, or it's really going to get ugly.
David, one of those teams in next week's game is the Seahawks, but I wanted to give you a little FaceTime here, because as you look atop the NFC standings, there's a familiar face there. And yes, the Seahawks are there at 7-2, but your Philadelphia Eagles also sitting there atop. A couple weeks ago, I feel like we were getting ready to write these guys off, but now your birds are flying high, my friend.
Well, they're winning games, but they're not playing great, which I remember all the way back to 1999 when the Titans, early in that season, they were they were winning games, but they were winning by like 3 points and by 4 points. And at one point, I remember asking Bruce Matthews something. It was I don't remember exactly what the question was, but it was sort of a yeah, but kind of thing, right? Yeah, you guys are winning, but and Bruce Matthews, of course, who was well into his Hall of Fame career at that point, looked at me and he said, "Look, let me tell you something." He said, "Good teams win when they don't play their best football." And I remembered that as that, throughout that year, as the Titans got on a roll and started to play really good football. And that's what the Eagles are doing right now. That's what Buffalo was doing early on. I don't know what's going on with Buffalo so much right now. Kansas City's sort of, I think, just a sort of return to the norm. They won every single close game last year. I think statistically it would have been impossible to repeat that. I think but they're still winning some games where they don't play well. And that, that brings me back to my earlier point about the game against the Titans, right? Or against the Chargers for the Titans, on the occasions where the Titans have played really well this year, which is the Chargers game in Week 1 in Denver, they did a lot of things in that Denver game that should have won too. This is a team that when it plays well, it doesn't win. So that that sort of explains how they're in the position they're in right now.
Couldn't have said it any better myself. Me personally, Sunday at Nissan Stadium, David, I'll be praying for another interception and special teams return if they want to have a shot, I think, to realistically win that game, because Texans defense figures to give the Titans a lot of problems. David BOCLAIR of the Nashville Banner, thank you as always for taking some time on a Wednesday with us, partner. We will catch up with you again soon.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me, boys.
Thank you, David. David BOCLAIR, once again, ladies and gentlemen, our good friend at the Nashville Banner, talking all things Titans. Yes, they're pros. Yes, they're going to go out and do it. It's going to be tough, Calvin, though. They got the Texans. They got the Seahawks. They got the Jaguars. Luckily, all 3 at home. Then the couple road games versus Cleveland and San Francisco. They do have the Chiefs coming to town the week of Christmas. So Patrick Mahomes' claws will be in town coming up for that one. So buckle up. This could be fun, though. This just dawned on me, Calvin. But Week 17, can I interest you in Titans hosting the Saints? That could be the tankathon battle of supremacy right there. They could be taking turns throwing picks and handing it off and fumbling the number one all the way to the number one pick on that afternoon. Calvin immediately shut me down, though, so that tells us all we need to know about the Tankathon battle. But just you remember that I put that out there. We'll see what happens toward the end of the season. Again, Titans hosting the Texans this weekend. Make sure you check out our coverage on Friday. We have a little bit of a run-up with that with David and myself. We'll also have a recap with Mo and yours truly on Monday coming out of that. Long segment there, but thanks again to David BOCLAIR from the Nashville Banner. When we come back, Calvin and I are going to talk high school football, round 2 of the TSSAA state playoffs. We'll break it down right after this.
Columbia Power and Water Systems is dedicated to bringing our customers reliable, local service. Whether you're turning on a light switch, your faucet, or streaming on TV, our dedicated team members from here in Murray County work every day to keep you on. If you need us, call us 931-388-4833 or visit cpws.com. CPWS, local service, local support.
Zion Christian Academy at zioneagles.org or 931-388-7531. You can schedule your appointment to visit their beautiful campus. Again, zioneagles.org or 931-7531 to schedule your visit today.
We're rocking and rolling, boys and girls. Opening hour of Main Street Sports today, presented as always by our friends at the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Here on all of your Main Street media properties, wherever you dialed in. Thank you for tuning in. Wade Neely sitting in the saddle alongside Calvin White and our producer, Mark Rogers. Just had fun talking pro football with our good friend from the Nashville Banner, David BOCLAIR. Calvin, let's roll up our sleeves. And let's get into our wheelhouse here. TSSAA state playoffs crank up week 2. Mo and I dipped our toes into the water a little bit with scores and a little chatter on Monday. But obviously the big talking point as we get to week 2, this was mentioned a number of times in the offseason, but it really didn't start becoming a huge thing until felt like the final 2 weeks of the regular season, and now certainly is upon us. But the new restructuring of the state playoff format, if the goal was to get new and intriguing matchups, then they certainly have succeeded in that. If the goal was to reduce travel, have good opposing fan base attendance, maybe they're going to miss the mark there, I feel like. But we have the new and intriguing matchups, and I'm curious, you mentioned a slew of teams have already been knocked out in your coverage area. What jumps out to you as we enter week 2 in the state playoffs this week?
Just from my teams or anybody?
Well, we'll start with your teams, and then I'll offer a little bit on my squad as well, and then we'll go statewide.
Well, I think the most interesting matchup, at least in my coverage area, is Springfield and Lexington. Lexington upset Haywood in the first round. If Haywood would have won, Springfield would have had to travel. So Springfield gets to host in the second round, but Lexington's one of those teams that on paper looks like it could give Springfield a little bit better game than it would have liked in the second round. But I do still think Springfield wins it. If everything works out If everything works out the right way, there we could get a Springfield Pearl Cone rematch in the state semifinals, which would be awesome because Pearl Cone's a lot better than it was when they played Springfield earlier in the year, and Springfield's a lot better than they were when they barely lost that game. And honestly, I think we talked about it when it happened. Springfield should have won that game. But I'll also have my eye on the East Robertson Peabody game.
Yeah.
Peabody's 8-2, I believe, but East Robertson has just dominated everybody all year long. They've got 2 Mr. Football finalists, or semifinalists, quarterback Cason Young and Tennessee commit Zach Groves on the defensive line. They've just been so good all year. Their closest win is by 4 points, and they're 11-0, and they've won 9 of those games by double digits. Just Kirkwood. They beat Kirkwood by 4, and then Liberty Creek took them to overtime the very first game of the year. And outside of that, East Robertson has just blown everybody out of the water. Right now, they look like a team that could compete and win the 2A state championship. And Joe Burns has got to travel to Coalfield this week, so good luck to those boys.
Yeah, long trip, if nothing else, right?
Yeah, and Coalfield's really good. Joe Burns won its first playoff game in, I believe, 4 seasons last week. They beat Whitwell, who beat them 2 weeks prior in the regular season.
I was at that regular season game, yeah. That seems like a big turnaround on short notice for Joe Burns.
Yeah, and then Kirkwood is the only Montgomery County team left. Congratulations, boys. You got your first playoff win in program history. You beat Brighton. Now you have to go play Page on the road. The 4-time reigning Class 5A state runner-up. Page undefeated again. Coach Rathbone's got another really good squad over there. It looks like it could compete for the 5A state championship again. But Kirkwood's really good on both sides too. But unfortunately for the Cobras, I think Page is just a different beast, just like they are how they've been over the last couple of years. But I think the biggest game outside of my coverage area that I think I would have an eye on the Riverdale Maryville game in 6A. It's one of those situations where it feels like it could be, we're playing a semifinal game in the second round. But 2 really good football teams. That Murfreesboro area with Riverdale, Blackman, Oakland is always really good. I'll be able to interested to see if Riverdale can, pull off a big one and get to the third round.
It's going to be interesting. Sycamore is holding it down for my little lonesome 3 coverage areas there with Dixon County and Creekwood falling by the wayside last week. Also, East Hickman, unfortunately, was shut out at Mount Pleasant. And, good news, bad news, to your point a minute ago with Kirkwood. Good news, Sycamore went on the road, beat White House Heritage, who was the number 1 seed. They were one of the handful of 4 seeds that did pull the upset. And, usually the line of thinking sometimes is when you beat the number 1 seed, you kind of essentially become the number 1 seed, right? Well, be that as it may, you get rewarded with the trip to Covington this week. And not necessarily going to be the easiest assignment for Coach Harrison and the War Eagles, but they are a hard-nosed football team, and they play a unique style of football. They can throw a lot, but they prefer to keep it on the ground. Not quite like Army, like we saw, was it last week, where they had the 13-minute drive almost for a second straight season. They don't play quite to that level, but they play similar in a sense where if they got a turnover here, a turnover there, and can shorten the game, and then maybe Hicks Hunter can run something in, maybe they can win a low-scoring game. So I'm not going to write off Sycamore just yet. I will say this before we close our first hour, Calvin. Who knows how it goes? I got a feeling how it's going to go because Alcoa is involved. But Alcoa is jumping up in 4A. But if you wanted to ever circle the new and intriguing matchups component of this, Alcoa is going to Upperman on Friday night. And the Bees are 8-2, or finished regular season 8-2. Alcoa finished 9-1. Alcoa, first time not winning the region since 2012. That will be an electric game in the second round. That's a game that felt like it should have probably been a semifinal or quarterfinal for sure, but we get it in the second round. I don't know how it will shape up. I know it's at Upper, but I still kind of feel like Alcoa probably takes care of business. But that is one that I personally will have my eyes on heading into this week as well. And again, as we open the show by telling you guys, no Thursday games. Most of my games in week 10 or week 11, Calvin, were on Thursday as well. So this is an unusual twist here with all the teams playing on Friday for a change. But most, if not all, your games are going to be on Friday. And as of right now, looking at like 70 degrees for a high on Friday. So we will take that as we head into round 2 of the TSSAA state playoffs. Speaking of heading into 2, hour number 2 of Main Street Sports Today is upon us. We're going to take a quick time out. When Calvin and I come back, we will talk all things grab bag related. We got a little Jameis Winston talk. Yes, we got Jameis Winston in the docket. We got Walker Zimmerman, and it ain't good. I'll tell you a little bit about that later. We got an update on a man that was fleeing from justice in Dubai coming up in the grab bag. We got all that and then some, and a local coach has hit the unemployment line. We'll tell you all about those stories and more. Still to come, Joe Sullivan will join us, our colleague from Main Street Media. He's our local college hoops update connoisseur, and he will be with us in hour number 2. And then we will also close with Wild and Wacky Wednesday. So come on back, folks. All of that and then some as we kick off our second hour right after this timeout on Main Street Sports Today, presented by TOA of Columbia.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50-plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Zion Christian Academy at zioneagles.org or 931-388-7531. You can schedule your appointment to visit their beautiful campus. Again, zioneagles.org or 931-7531 to schedule your visit today.
Is your internet slowing you down? It's time for an upgrade. Whether you're at home, working from your home office, or at your business, it's time to unleash the speed you need with speeds up to 1 gig at CPWS for as low as $70 a month. Give us a call, 931-375-7777. Local service, local support, CPWS.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
Welcome back, folks. Hour number 2, Main Street Sports Today, presented as always by our friends at the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Wade Neely here, Calvin White there. Our producer, as always, Mark Rogers, making the magic happen behind the glass. And Calvin, time to dip into the grab bag. We got a number of different ways we could go on this, but I figured we would start with a story that we just recently brought to the table with Mo and myself on Monday. Were you keeping up with the Antonio Brown hiding out and fleeing in Dubai storyline over the weekend, Calvin?
I wasn't paying tremendous close attention to it. I honestly just got the notification on my phone that he was wanted for, I believe it was attempted murder, maybe. And I just looked at my phone and I said, "Yep, that checks out. That seems like an Antonio Brown thing over the last couple of years," and went back to whatever it was I was doing. But um, obviously, it does not look like things are going too well for Antonio Brown right now.
No, and that was kind of Mo and I's reaction on Monday. I'm with you. I got the notification at a high school football game on Friday, and I glanced at my phone, and I just said, "Well, that's crazy." But it's also Antonio Brown, and then put my phone back in my pocket there. But we do have an update there. Again, after hiding out in Dubai, kind of even taunting folks, posting pictures in glamorous sports cars and all these fancy locations, he did not do a great job still, I'm telling you folks, of trying to remain hidden by any means. But he was apprehended last week in Dubai and was processed quickly up at Essex County. And authorities have now moved him to Florida just after 11 a.m. local time yesterday, booked into a correctional center in Miami-Dade County where the allegations stem from. About 6 hours later, as you might expect, Calvin, not just Antonio, but this is the case pretty much everybody. As you might expect, not guilty was the plea that Antonio Brown has entered. It wasn't me that attempted that murder. That was somebody else, or at least it wasn't me. Then you can't prove it, right?
Yeah. That's also seems like a very Antonio Brown thing to try and do something and then tell everybody you didn't try to do that, even though you were the one that. They don't just go picking people up for no reason. They probably had a good reason to believe that you attempted that murder. So, I don't know anymore with Antonio Brown. He was on track to, be one of the best receivers in the history of the game, and over the last couple of years, we've unfortunately seen a bunch of stuff like this with him.
Yeah, and I might have caught Calvin mid-sip there because his pause, I was thinking, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe he was thinking he was going to chime in with guilty. But yeah, not guilty is the plea that was rendered for Antonio Brown. And as you also might expect, Brown's attorney saying that his client acted in self-defense. And so I've been watching a lot of Better Call Saul lately, so maybe this is my, Jimmy McGill, Saul Goodman antenna going off. But I'll be curious to see how this kind of shakes out. But Antonio Brown, apprehended in Dubai and then quickly processed and is back under supervision here, not just in the U.S., but in the Sunshine State. So chalk that up to maybe some not so great news. Chalk this up to some maybe fantastic news, Calvin. Jameis Winston, the one and only. Everybody loves him, unless you're a fan of him throwing interceptions to opposing teams, in which case, maybe you don't love him as much. But he's a lovable character nonetheless. And after a year-long crusade, it feels like, between Mo and myself, we finally might get to see famous Jameis in action for the Giants. They fired Brian Daboll this week. Jackson Dart maybe can't go. Sounds like he won't go. But we said on Monday, when you roll out Russell Wilson, you literally are kind of waving the white flag, unfortunately, at this point. Did it to start the year, took 2 L's, including that crazy loss to the Cowboys in week 2 that they blew in overtime with Russ at the helm. But it looks like famous Jameis will be tabbed. No longer quarterback 3, but now thrust into the spotlight. And immediately, Calvin, I cannot wait to watch little Giants football on Sunday because good, bad, or indifferent, Jameis is going to make something happen.
Yeah, ever since he left Tampa Bay, I think everybody or most people would agree that, Jameis Winston should have been a starter somewhere, considering the quarterback trouble that a lot of teams in the league have had over the past couple of years. But, like you said, Russell Wilson obviously was not the answer for the Giants. And the Giants' move after that was to go to the rookie Jackson Dart. And I guess now Jameis Winston is going to actually get a shot to see if he's still got anything left in the tank. And, when he's on, he's really good. But unfortunately, when he is bad, he is also really bad. But famous Jameis is going to get a shot for at least another week to start a game in the NFL. And I'm sure there will be a lot of people tuned in to the Jameis Winston experience.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And, this will be fascinating because they got the Packers who are suddenly reeling, 2-game losing streak. Tucker Kraft's out for the season. It feels like they're kind of on the cusp. If they lose this game, things could really potentially fall off for the Packers here. But Jameis, when he didn't get moved at the trade deadline, Mo and I talked about it. I said I was a little sad on the inside. I wanted to see him, caged birds can't be locked up forever. So good to see Jameis maybe with a chance to spread his wings. That's a noon kickoff on Fox on Sunday. Again, Packers making the trip to MetLife Stadium. So all eyes will be on Jameis Winston there. Cruising right along. This is a story that we talked about. We're staying in the realm of football here. This is a story we talked about at the start of the show. There is a new coaching vacancy. It's not necessarily at a school you might think we would really talk about on this show, but when we tell you the name of the head coach, it might make a little more sense as Sewanee, the University of the South. Beautiful, beautiful campus, gorgeous location over there in Cowan. But with that being said, they have announced that Andy McCollum, the former MTSU head coach, bounced around at a couple of Division I stops after Georgia Tech, notably as well. But he has been relieved of duties after just a couple of seasons. And this is one, as an MTSU guy, I don't know about you, Calvin. Obviously, he was before your tenure. I only got a season of him as an undergrad myself. But when I saw this kind of tugged at my heartstrings because, didn't end well for him at MTSU, but he's a great guy by all accounts, and I wanted to see him do well no matter where it was. He ends his tenure at Sewanee with an 8-22 record.
Yeah, and when he first got there, even though they finished 3-7 that first year, that was the most games that Sewanee had won in a couple years. And from everything I've seen and read about this, everybody's kind of on the same page for the most part that it was dumb to fire him, and that Sewanee's kind of a program that hasn't had a whole lot of stability for a long time. And you just mentioned it a minute ago. Andy McCollum has been around the block. He's coached at some big name schools and had some big time jobs. And you'd like to think that with a little bit more time, maybe he could have, kind of built Sewanee up a little bit.
Yeah, and I'll be curious to see kind of if we find out. Who knows that we will. But I'm curious to see what maybe was the impetus for this. We're used to seeing coaching changes swiftly now at the Division I level, but at Division II, Division III, which Sewanee competes in, maybe there's still some time to stretch your legs. And they're 3-6 currently, but they have lost all 5 of their home games, and they're 1-5 in conference play. So I'll be curious to see if and when we learn kind of the real story behind the scenes. Offensive coordinator Tracy Malone will serve as the interim head coach with a nationwide search underway. The school announced they close Saturday at Millsaps College. Their AD, John Shackelford, said, Coach McCollum brought a wealth of experience and a deep passion for developing young men through the game of football. We are grateful for his leadership and the dedication that he and his staff have shown to our student athletes. As we look ahead, we remain committed to building a program that reflects Sewanee's values of excellence, integrity, and perseverance on the field. That, ladies and gentlemen, having been a college PR man myself, that is college PR 101. That's a big old nothing burger right there, Calvin. We thank you for your service, yada, 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 about, values of the school. But Sewanee, and, that was kind of still a big name, at least for them. So if you were maybe trying to make a little bit of a splash, I'm not sure how much more outside the box you could go to maybe do so. So we'll keep tabs on the Tigers as they continue. One final football note, and then we do have a soccer note I want to squeeze in here at the buzzer. Calvin, have you seen or heard the comments from Pitt head coach Pat Narduzzi this week by chance?
I have.
Okay.
David made us aware a couple of days ago.
That is right. Resident Notre Dame Golden Domer. I wanted to say Golden Homer, but Golden Domer. David Wilson pointed this out, and I kind of agree with the comments that are about to unfold, but obviously this falls under you don't really want to say that out loud, but this is Pitt head coach Pat Narduzzi. They play Notre Dame this week. College game day is going to be there. They're still in the mix for a potential playoff berth, and this is what your head coach has to say.
Do you feel like this is a must-win for this team when it comes to something?
Absolutely not. It is not an ACC game. I'm glad you brought that up. It's not an ACC game. I gladly get beat 103 or 110 to 10 in that game. They can put 100 up on us as long as we win the next two after that. But again, our focus is on Notre Dame and getting as many wins as we can.
Do you feel like this is a must-win for this team?
Pat Narduzzi, folks, head coach of the Pitt Panthers. A couple of things on that clip, Calvin. I don't know if you could hear it, but I loved when that quote was ongoing. You could hear the laptop keys in the press room just absolutely clicking 100 miles an hour because every single reporter just mouth probably jaw wide open as they can't believe what they're hearing. Absolutely not. It is not an ACC game. I'd gladly get beat 103. I love that he adds more to this, or 110 to 10. They can put up 100 on us as long as we win the next two after that. Indeed, an interesting comment. If you want to really, just go pure superficial, yes, what he said, or literal, what he said makes sense, right? But there ain't no way you can say that. I don't know what the messaging is or what his intentions really were there.
Yeah, he said he'd be okay with getting beat by 100, but that the focus is on Notre Dame. I mean, it's true what he said. I mean, a win over Notre Dame would go a long way in, bulking up your playoff chances. Obviously, they still want to, finish at the top of the ACC potentially. But, I'm not sure that that's something that your players want to open up the phone and see that you said that and that you went viral on Twitter for saying that you were okay with your team losing by 100.
Yeah, well, you could win the next two games if you lose by 100. And since he wanted to go literal, and say he's only worried about the next two games, we'll go literal. If you lose by 100, you might get fired. You may not even get to coach the next two ACC games at that point. If you give up 110 points, I love that he said, 103 to 10. No, never mind. Make it 110 to 10. Let's lose. If we're going to lose, let's lose by an even 100. I don't know what was going on with Narduzzi there.
At least he spotted himself some points. He's got a little bit of faith in the boys to put up a score or two.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a alternate spread of 110 on Notre Dame, or Pitt rather, plus 110, you're pretty good. But if you have a Pitt plus 99 ticket this week, you might be in trouble because Narduzzi said he's okay with them losing by 100. Couldn't wrap my brain around that one. That was interesting. And at the end of all that, Calvin, I'm gonna whisper this. I don't think that they'll really pull it off, but these are the games that Pitt kind of wins, right? Just when you kind of randomly think, okay, it's Pitt, we roll in, we get a win. They just find ways to lose games they're not supposed to, just when they're on the cusp of success, and they find ways to throw a little fly in the ointment on teams right when they're on the cusp of success. So it wouldn't surprise me, I'll say that much, if they somehow did win. It would surprise me a whole lot more if they lost by 100. Interesting comments there. As we close out the grab bag, this is wrapping up a loose end from our visit with Valair Shabilla from 615 Soccer on Monday. And Calvin Valair told us, as epic as the season was for Nashville, there will be some question marks about where the team kind of goes in the offseason. And we got our first piece of that in terms of player personnel. Nashville SC defender Walker Zimmerman, one of the iconic NSC players. He's a club legend and a cornerstone, two-time MLS Defender of the Year. Also got a great track record with the U.S. men's national team. He's going to test the waters in free agency, and Valair said that. He's kind of not really topped out here, but his stock is never really going to be much higher, and so this kind of is one of those – it reminds me of Derrick Henry leaving the Titans in a sense, Calvin, where you'd love to have him back, and maybe, you keep the band back together and run it back again, but his stock's never going to be higher, and it sounds like he's going to dip his toes into the free agency water this offseason.
Yeah, he's, like you said, a club legend. But, if if he feels like his potential is, potential to get paid and go win somewhere is never going to be higher, then I think you've got to do that. Even though, as much as Nashville SC fans will hate to see him go, as much as Titans fans hate to see Derrick Henry go.
Yeah, you just say, leave the nest. We wish you the best, Zim. He's been a fantastic player for NSC, and hopefully they won't be able to replace him fully. Maybe you can replace some of the production, but you can't replace a lot of the good memories and vibes and fan camaraderie that he has built up. So 172 career appearances. That's the fifth most in their short history in the MLS, 5 seasons. 46 appearances for the U.S. men's national team again, including all 4 of their matches in the last World Cup. So hats off to Walker Zimmerman. We salute you, brother, and best of luck. Go get some money, and we'll be cheering for you, except when you come back to Geodis Park in a different uniform next year. But it's all love on this side of town. So best of luck to Walker Zimmerman. We're going to take a quick time out. When we come back, our good friend Joe Sullivan from Main Street Media, we're going to talk college hoops. We're going to talk a little more college hoops. And then we're going to dig real deep and talk even more college hoops. It's all things local. It's all things round ball with our good friend Joe Sullivan on the other side of this timeout here on Main Street Sports Today, where we're presented by TOA of Columbia.
This holiday season, the largest lantern festival in the country returns to Nashville Zoo. Experience more than 1,000 all-new handcrafted lanterns, towering creatures, magical worlds, and a North Pole village. At the center of it all, the Smashville Ice Rink. Welcome back to Zoolumination at Nashville Zoo. Bigger, brighter, and better than ever.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50-plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily, as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
Easing on into hour number 2 of Main Street Sports Today, boys and girls. We're presented each and every single afternoon by our friends at the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Wade Neely here, Calvin White there, producer Mark Rogers making the magic happen behind the Main Street glass. And it's time to join the one and only, our good friend and colleague. He is Joe Sullivan. And Joe, all right, first of all, I'm checking the lid out, man. That's not a where's that from? And give us the backstory immediately there, partner.
Yeah, this is a hat from Hialeah Race Course in Miami. Now, maybe the most beautiful racetrack in the country. It still stands, but there's no racing there anymore. It's a beautiful place. I wish it still existed.
Okay, so
but I was there, and I bought a hat. What can I tell you? A long time ago, this is an old hat.
That's a throwback, and I was going to have some questions. I thought you were going to be cheating on Saratoga and Belmont. And I was a little worried, but it's a defunct track now. You're telling me.
Yeah. I have a lot of hats from racetracks, and when I moved here to Nashville, I put them on the floor in front of me. I was trying to decide where to put them, and I realized 12 of the tracks on the hats I had or didn't exist anymore. The sport slowly dies.
Well, that's a bit of a bummer to start our conversation. So
No, I'm sorry.
Let's immediately kind of boost the mood with Joe. Okay,
I'd like to say it's an honor to be on with Calvin for the first time. But I will say, Calvin, you need to do a little work on your background. It's just a white wall behind you. You need to get some like intellectual books on a bookcase behind you, to really,
Well,
look
no,
what
Joe,
Mo has. Mo always looks
Yeah,
great
I've-
in the background.
Yeah, I gotta get some decor to make it look like I'm smarter than I actually am. I gotta, maybe frame one of the papers back here and get some books that make it look like I read anything more than what goes in the newspaper every week.
Hey, that sounds like a good plan. I like that. All right,
Yeah,
I'm not surprised, Calvin. You got a good idea what to do.
I was going to say that actually, Joe, that's just a wallpaper of all the racetracks you just mentioned. Just going and forgotten. You just can't see it through there. Joe Sullivan, our good friend from Main Street Media, talking all things local hoops. And Joe, let's just dive right in. We'll go in the weeds on local hoops, but man, a great night across the board, locally, regionally, and nationally at the NCAA level last night.
Yeah, it was a very interesting night. So many good games, and I was jumping around a little bit. I was focused mostly on Lipscomb playing at UNC Asheville, but I think and we can talk about that if you like. But
yeah,
I think the score that really shocked me was Louisville really beating Kentucky as solidly as they did. I know that's going to upset Calvin, who's a UK fan, and. But boy, what's up with Louisville and another sensational freshman, Michael Brown, for them had a great night. There are so many good freshmen in college basketball this season. This NBA draft really could end up being an all-timer with some of there's so much great talent that's going to be available. And a guy like Michael Brown from Louisville is going to be in that lottery for sure, I would think.
Absolutely. And Joe, I'm glad you mentioned that game, and I wanted to kind of pick your brain because that's one I felt bad because I didn't get to watch any of it. And going into the season, I had heard that quote unquote Louisville and UK was back in terms of the rivalry. So I know Louisville ends up kind of pulling away, as we'll call it. But break down the game. I mean, was it as intense as I had hoped maybe leading into it?
So I was watching Lipscomb. It looks like Calvin was watching it. Maybe he can give us a better
Calvin,
idea.
Share your thoughts then, because that was one I had circled and then promptly forgot. So I apologize as a sports talk show host here.
Yeah, it had a little bit of the juice back just because, this was the first year in a while, probably ever since Rick Pitino left, that there was actually legitimate preseason hopes that Louisville was going to be a legitimate team. And obviously Michael Brown's a big part of that. He was one of the, star-studded freshmen that Joe's talking about in this year's freshman class. But, with your Darren Petersons and your Cameron Boozers of the world, Michael Brown was kind of the guy that was getting the least amount of attention. And, he put the sport on notice last night. And, Kentucky still doesn't have, Jaden Quinton's back, who's going to be a really good defender, hopefully, when he comes back. But, Louisville made just about anything they looked at in the first half. Got a lot of open threes. And Pat Kelsey, he's talked about how Louisville wants to take more than 50% of its shots from three. And I think they did that last night. They shot 40 threes, made 13 of them, I believe. But and the big thing was they only turned it over one time in the first half. And
So hey, Calvin, one thing that I always calculate when I'm at a game is what are teams on twos? Because there's such an emphasis on threes and shooting them, and you need to do it. But I think often you will find teams that have great nights shooting from twos win games last night. So Louisville, I was just looking at the stats, was 18 for 29 on twos last night.
threes and layups, baby.
That's gonna win you a lot of games.
Yeah, and as many. I think I heard it was before the game went final. I want to say that Louisville had over 30 points in the paint.
Wow.
So getting open threes, and when you get that many open threes, they're going to start crowding the line, and that kind of opens up the stuff inside. And they were able to get a bunch of open layups on back cuts and things. And Michael Brown got to the rim a lot. They couldn't really stop Michael Brown or just about anything that Louisville was doing in the first half. But I think the big takeaway was, Kentucky was down 15 or 20 two different times and cut the lead down to 5 or 4, and just couldn't make the big play to swing the game and take the lead back in the end. And there was a little bit different feeling to the game just because it's so early in the year. Usually they play it around Thanksgiving, but I think the reason they did that, they said that they didn't want to compete with the TV ratings for college football on Saturdays when they usually play it. But both of them are really good teams, and by the time the regular season's over, I think we'll be talking about both of them potentially as Final Four national championship good.
And what a job Pat Kelsey has done at Louisville. He was not the first choice, as I recall. And I guess they're happy they have him now. And he's a little bit over the top for me, in terms of his, his attitude. But boy, he's certainly he's doing the job. He's turned this program around in 1 year. And now with that win last night, you have to think they're a contender for big things this season.
Absolutely. And to both of y'all's points, it's one of those, like I said, as I failed miserably to even watch the game last night, though, but just when both of those teams are, we say this about, certain teams in sports, right? Indiana is the one that gets mentioned a lot. The game and the sport feels better when a rivalry like that actually means something. And it felt like going into it and coming out of it last night, it felt like it meant a lot. So that's a good report. Only meeting between those two teams this year. Joe, the game that you did mention you were at, we talked about it in the rundown. UNC Asheville slipping by Lipscomb 69-64. Asheville was in the tournament a couple of years ago. Was that them winning it, or was that Lipscomb kind of letting it get away from them last night?
No, Asheville took the game at the end. Lipscomb did not make the plays they needed to make in what was a very close game. I mean, it was Lipscomb got a great game from Grant Assman, who had a career high 25, I believe. I think he hit his first 5 threes. He's a 6'10" graduate who has really just been a bench player for them. I think they're going to rely on him a lot more this season. But it is, there was a game that was there for the taking, and I believe Lipscomb's going to need to get every one of those they can to have any kind of success this season. So it was disappointing from that perspective, because I do think it's going to be a struggle for them this year. They don't have the athletes. They had this Ethan Duncan is the shooting guard for them. There was a Division II All-American last year at Lubbock Christian. And I think a lot of people were relying on him to be their leading scorer. He seemed overmatched in the 2 games I've watched, which is not good. And they lost to Mercer on Sunday. I watched that, and Mercer's very athletic, and they're going to have a lot of problems with teams that are athletic. This is not an athletic team at Lipscomb, and I don't think they have the skill that some of the teams in the past have had too. So I'd be worried for Kevin Carroll in his first year with what he's facing.
Sounds like worrying a little bit, and then adding a little fuel for that. They got Brian in a kind of a gimme game coming up soon. Brian,
right.
Tennessee. But then obviously Battle of the Boulevard coming up next Wednesday. Is that something they can turn? I'm always curious too, Joe, your thoughts on that game, because it feels like the better team usually wins, but it also certainly feels like you could throw the record. I know that everybody says that about a lot of things, but you feel like you could throw the records out the window with that rivalry.
So I don't have the statistics off the top of my head, but the games are almost always close.
Feels that way.
Very few routes in that series. There was one recently, I think, when Lipscomb had some injuries, but mostly they've been close games, and a number of them have come down to the last possession. I don't think we're going to see that this year. I think Belmont is a team really on the uptick, and I have my doubts about Lipscomb. I'd be really surprised if this is a close game next Wednesday. I would, I think Belmont's the much better team.
To your point, Joe, 2022, it was a 2-point game. 2023 is a 1-point game. Last year, obviously, a 1-point game as well. So can't get much closer than that, but it also sounds like next Wednesday won't be as close as those unless something crazy happens.
Well, I'd really be surprised, and then we could say rivalries throw the records out if that happens, if Lipscomb's able to give them a game. And, of course, it's possible, but I really have my doubts. I really like this Belmont team. They still have some questions that need to be answered, but I think they're also a great start.
Yeah, tell us more about them. And that was one my calendar's already booked next Wednesday, and I was kicking myself because that's one I would love to go to, hosting Lipscomb. But it sounds like the Bruins, when we spoke to you last, at least Mo and I, you were kind of singing their praises early.
And I continue to. They played Tennessee State Saturday night, and I was there. And we can get to Tennessee State, which really surprised me. Tennessee State gave them a really good battle, and but in the end, Belmont had too much for them, and they played well in the second half. And the key to Belmont here is the point guard position. They have the offensive firepower. They seem to be a better defensive team than they've been in the last couple of years. They have the shooters like Tyler Lumblade, Sam Orm, Drew Sarnowski can score inside. Brigham Rogers had double-figure points on Saturday. But how are they going to get the ball to him is the problem. So Nick McLean is such a key player for them. He is the transfer from Eastern Washington. He's a graduate. The younger brother of Kevin McLean, who played at Belmont. And he had I was talking to Casey Alexander after the game, and I was trying to get him to comment how important McLean is. Mm-hmm. And then he immediately said, like, yeah, in the first half, he had 5 turnovers, no assists, and didn't score. How important was he to us then? In the second half, though, he had 8 assists in the half and really ran the team. So how McLean performs is really going to be the offensive engine for Belmont. They don't need him to score, but they really need him to run the show. And the other person who could do that is Isaiah West, the kid from Goodpasture High School, who played at Vanderbilt and Sanford, now is a junior at Belmont. He's been held back by a shoulder injury, and he wears a strap while he's playing, and he's just not ready to play full time yet. Casey uses him in spots. So when they have to take McLean out, and it's a problem, I think. So they need to either just McLean needs to be in such great shape that he'll play every minute. I think back to Vanderbilt when they had Scottie Pippen as their point guard, and Scottie was by far their best player. They really couldn't function without him. And I remember asking him after a game, like, so how many minutes can you play? And he went, all of them. Like, he didn't want to come out. And so it is possible. There are players that can play, 38, 39 minutes. And I don't know if Casey will let him do that, but we'll see how it evolves over the season. It'll be interesting, and it might be a key to how successful it can be.
Joe, I don't know how much of an opportunity you've got to watch MTSU this year, but, they've got 2 bye wins over Milligan and Webster. And, it seems like a team that, is going to be maybe a little bit more competitive in Conference USA this year, just because they've got some guys that were really good players at other places. They've got their first real test of the year on the road at Evansville tonight, but that's also an MTSU team that I saw that was never really competitive against Austin Peay in an exhibition a couple weeks ago.
It's so my notes down here. MTSU hasn't played a game yet. That's what I wrote down. I'm being facetious, but so I haven't seen them. So you know more than me, Calvin. That's twice in this interview that you've trumped me. And
I should have introduced you, Joe, by setting the stage for our viewers. This is going to be a fun bromance between you and Calvin, loving and bonding over the game of college basketball this year, because Calvin's got the goods there.
Well, Calvin and I go back a few years. We know each other from sitting next to each other at the MTSU games. So this is nothing new. Calvin and I go back.
He's only gotten better, I guess, is what I should have said. Smarter, right?
Yeah, there was nowhere to go but up back in those times for your boy. Going and talking to Nick McDevitt and a couple players. After MTSU had some good years when I was in college. Made the conference semifinals a couple times, but Jordan Walker and the Final Four Florida Atlantic team kind of slammed the door on them a couple times.
I think going to Evansville is a winnable game. I saw Evansville play, 10 minutes against Purdue, and they actually, held on for 10 minutes, and then the roof caved in. So it's a winnable game on the road. That this will be a good measuring stick to see how good they could possibly be. We'll see. I mean, certainly a better test than what they've been scheduled these first 2 games.
Joe, you mentioned TSU earlier. What did you take away from them from that Belmont game? What can we kind of extrapolate from them thus far in your mind?
Yeah, so I've totally flipped on Tennessee State
Okay.
here. I think they might. I think they're going to be an OVC contender. I think here's what it starts with: Nolan Smith as the coach. I think that people should remember that he was an All-American at Duke, and then was on the staff with Coach Krzyzewski there, and then went to Louisville, which was a disaster with Kenny Payne, and then he was at Memphis with Penny Hardaway, and sneakily. And I was, this got past me. In August, he brought in a transfer from Memphis, Dante Harris, who is a 6-foot point guard and didn't play much at Memphis last year. But this guy was the MVP of the Big East tournament when Georgetown upset the field back in 2021. So I had no idea how the effect he could have. So he has got the basketball in his hands, free reign to do what he wants. And he had 20 plus against Tennessee State. He had 21, I think he had 17 in the first half. Belmont did a good job of shutting him down in the second half. He's in the OVC. He is really going to be hard to handle. But here's the thing I noticed about Tennessee State, and I'm going to compare it to a football experience I had. I went to a Notre Dame Stanford game many years ago at Notre Dame Stadium, and Stanford. It was Jim Harbaugh was pretty new there at that point. He had come from San Diego University on the Division II level, 3 level, I think 3, and now he's at Stanford. And I'm sitting behind the Stanford bench. And they win the game. They win at Notre Dame, and not that was a big deal in those days with Charlie Weiss, et cetera. But you could just see how things operated on the sidelines. It was like a really NFL type of sideline. How organized they were, how sharp they were, how things looked on the sideline. And when I looked across the court at Tennessee State sideline on Saturday night, I said, "That's like Jim Harbaugh's Stanford team. This is a team that's operating with a guy that knows what he's doing, and the staff knows what to do, and the players know what their roles are this early in the season." Like, he was moving things around, and people knew what to do. Players jump off the bench when they knew they had to go in. The talent level is going to, and a tough non-conference schedule is probably going to depress the win total. But I think in the conference, the OVC is weak. We have to admit this. And I think they're going to have a chance to win some games, led by Dante Harris. And, Nolan Smith, we'll give him a year, and I'm really going to be interested to see how he remakes this roster next year. And I just really liked what I saw about how his team played and how he operated and his whole program on Saturday night.
The rebuild could be a little ahead of schedule, it sounds like, or at least the culture rebuild and the kind of backbone of the team, I guess, is not completely removed. Considering, and that's the crazy part, Joe, considering how late in the process all this came about, right?
Yeah, so I remember his press conference. I asked him, "So this is your roster?" Because it was late. It was late July, and he said, "Yes, it was," which probably was an honest answer at the time. But then he snuck out and got this guard from Memphis, who really was a problem for Belmont, especially in the first half. He's really fun to watch. He's as Casey Alexander said, he's going to score a lot of points and he's going to take a lot of shots.
Calvin, what else you got for Joe here?
Are we ready to get to Joe's National Player of the Year update? You said we had.
Oh yeah. Bring us up to speed on that, Joe. Thank you for reminding us.
So you asked me, besides the freshmen, who could be a National Player of the Year candidate, and you asked me for a non-freshman, and I choked on the question, which aggravated me for days. And but I thought about it, and then. By the way, I think it really could be a freshman, the way these guys are playing. And I am still a really big Cam Boozer fan. That hasn't changed. I love how he makes his teammates better. But anyway, it finally hit me. What really my favorite player outside of the freshman is a guard that plays for UCLA, Donovan Dent. He really is an All-American candidate. He's hurt right now, but it's not a major injury. He'll be back. And so it's just a question of, like, if he's going to be National Player of the Year, he has to lead UCLA to the Big Ten title. Still sounds weird, right, to say it? Mm-hmm. And I really think he's an exciting player, an unselfish player who can still score a lot of points. I really love Donovan Dent's game, so he's my guy. And here's the other person I thought of, JT Toppin at Texas Tech, that they lost to Illinois last night. But there's another guy who could play it here. He had a big game last night. And here's your trivia. 2 years ago, they were teammates at New Mexico. JT Toppin and Donovan Dent. And now they're both could be first-team All-Americans. So it's amazing to me that is possible. And then Richard Pitino was their coach, who now is the coach at Xavier. And, boy, could he use them. I watched them get crushed by Santa Clara the other night. Santa Clara is a real sneaky good team. They're good. But Xavier was really manhandled on their home court by Santa Clara. So it's going to be a long season at Xavier. But, Richard, you Xavier fans out there, are there any out there listening? Probably not.
Hey, I will stop you right there real quick. Father-in-law and mother-in-law, both proud Xavier alums. So at least we got two people tuned in here. So
yeah, all right. And my son-in-law, but he won't be listening to this, is a big Xavier basketball fan because he's from Cincinnati. It is if you look at that Richard Pitino was able to bring those types of players to New Mexico, he's going to be able to bring those types of players to Xavier. It will get better, but this is going to be this is not going to be a great year for Xavier based on what I saw against Santa Clara the other night.
Okay, well, they got a fun game versus Cincy coming up. That crosstown.
Well, yes, always a bitter struggle. And I watched a little bit of Cincinnati last night. Lipscomb, and I had two other games I was messing around with: LaSalle Temple, because that's my Philadelphia thing, and then I was also watching Cincinnati Dayton, which they don't always play. It's unusual that they played. The game was down in Cincinnati. And Dayton really didn't play well, and Cincinnati played pretty good, and they won the game. So Cincinnati looked like I think they're going to beat Xavier too.
One game you did not mention, and it's okay, Joe. I'll forgive you. But the Michigan Wolverines, it took them overtime versus Wake Forest, but their quest to go undefeated still is intact. They got MTSU up in Ann Arbor next Wednesday.
They do. That's right. Good. Nick has that, and he has Tennessee on the schedule, so they are going to get some tough games soon.
And Houston.
And let's not forget Houston as well.
Yes, very good. Schedule. Yeah, so they are going to play some tough games, even though we were teasing about the schedule so far. I thought you were kind of lucky. The kid at Wake missed the free throw at the end of that would have they could have won. So you were kind of lucky. But now you are the biggest Ade Mara fan in the country. Ade Mara. 7'4" center from Michigan. He played really well last night. I was thinking in on that one too.
I had a feeling you might be at least popping in occasionally, but he's not Vlad Golden, but he kind of reminds you of Vlad Golden in terms of just the size and the frame, if nothing else, last night. So we'll tap into more Michigan talk when we get into that MTSU game again next Wednesday. But looking forward to more conversations with Joe. I'm glad we got to spend some time with you as always, and we look forward to your next now defunct racetrack hat on your next appearance.
We could start something like that. Yeah, I'll break another one out. I kept the hats. The tracks are gone, unfortunately. Actually, this is a fond memory because I had a good day at Hialeah at the time I went. Hit a pick 3, and so
now I got to ask you,
forget those.
Is that a condition you are compelled to buy the hat if you only have a good day, or are you buying it regardless?
No, I'll buy the hat anyway. Maybe just to make up for my, feeling bad after, which is usually the case.
I'm a sicko like that. I sometimes will do that, if I'm losing, be like, oh, well, at least I'll remember this, how horrible this game was. That's something to keep reminding me. But that's why we love you, Joe Sullivan. Thank you so much for your time, brother. We'll catch up with you next week.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Joe. Joe Sullivan, our Main Street Media basketball colleague. Calvin and him chopping it up there. And Calvin, I'm glad you mentioned that because, that UK Louisville game, I had it circled, was prepared, left the gym late, and by the time I got home, I saw Michigan was locked in a close one versus lowly Wake Forest. And, I've been joking that they're going to go undefeated this season. Then I said, well, I can't watch them lose, 2 games in the year. But so that took me away from it. But I knew you'd have the goods, and thank you for giving an update because the juice is back in that rivalry, and it feels like when UK and Louisville are both playing well, that is as good as it gets.
Yeah, when they're both good, it's either way, I think it's the second best rivalry in the sport behind Duke and Carolina. There's other good rivalries. We mentioned Xavier Cincinnati, and
that's one of my favorites.
There's other rivalries, but especially when Kentucky and Louisville are both good, I think it's the second best rivalry in the sport.
Yeah, and again, Louisville slipping by last night, 96-88. Brown had 29 points to lead the Cards to the win. Our good friend of the show, Stephen Lunny, assistant soccer coach at Louisville, was fired up about that one last night at the Yum Center. We're going to take a quick time out. When we come back, it is Wild and Wacky Wednesday, boys and girls. That means it's time for the weirdest, wildest, and wackiest news we can find from across the globe. And trust me, we go across the globe. Come on back. It's our final segment here on Main Street Sports Today, where we're presented, as always, by TOA of Columbia.
The winning just got closer. All new Sportsbook, the latest gaming machines, live horse racing, and more. The Mid-Gaming Hall, Kentucky Downs.
Winning just got closer.
Being in Tennessee, we wanted to try to keep it as local as possible, so we have an entire section of our menu that is just dedicated to local whiskeys like Uncle Nearest, Jack Daniels, of course, George Dickel, Nelson Brothers, Greenbrier Whiskey, and all of our taps are all local. From 2 o'clock until midnight, we've got food every day for you guys. A good handful of appetizers, some entrees, and a couple salads and things like that. My name is Ethan Kanata. Please come down and see us at the Pick Lobby Bar here at the Omni in Nashville.
There's a line that links us all. Most of the time, we don't even think about it, but it's everywhere. Illuminating our neighborhoods, empowering our businesses, and helping us to recharge. Whether it comes from our grids, the sun, or a kind heart, we believe in the power of good energy. And as your family and region continue to grow, you can trust that we'll always be there for you. Middle Tennessee Electric, bringing good energy.
Final segment, boys and girls, here on this good-looking Wednesday. It's weird, it's wild, it's wacky. Wild and Wacky Wednesday time here as we get ready to close things out. Wayne Neely here, Calvin White there. Our producer making the magic happen is the one and only Mark Rogers. Couple quick things before we close it out today. Reminder, it'll be Mo and David on tomorrow's program, Throwback Thursday, and then you'll be looking at yours truly and David on Friday. That's your schedule update for the rest of the week. We also failed to mention a moment ago, both with Joe and at the end of our conversation there with Calvin, Gonzaga, they just had to send a little bit of a reminder last night, just absolutely walloping Creighton in the other big ranked showdown yesterday.
Yeah, this is kind of, along the same lines of what I said about Alabama football earlier. It feels weird saying the Zags are back, but, compared to the last 15, 20 years that Mark Few's put together, last year was a down year for them. They've been in the Sweet 16 for, I think 7-8 years in a row. And if last night was any indicator, Greg McDermott's always got a really good squad at Creighton. And if last night's any indicator, Mark Few is going to have another really good team at Gonzaga.
Basketball's better when Gonzaga's rolling, too. It's fun. Would love that'd be on my bucket list to go out to a big-time game out there, if at all possible, when they're rolling, as they more often than not are. I did not see any of that game last night, Calvin. I was watching Western Illinois and CSU Bakersfield, and I promise it's not related to it might be related to one of our weird and wild and wacky stories. That'll make sense in just a second. We talked about some sports betting sagas that have been going on here in North America. What if I told you that in Turkey, 8 people have been arrested, okay, but more than 1,000 Turkish soccer players, more than 1,000 players have been suspended as part of a wide-ranging investigation into illegal and alleged betting on football matches. 1,000 players. Now, a lot of these, it sounds like, Calvin, are in your second, third, and fourth divisions. But you got 1,000 people. I don't know what's going on over there in Turkey. But just when we thought the USA was kind of, the biggest and best, even in sports betting scandals, Turkey comes along and says, we got 1,000 players we're suspending.
Yeah, and with that many players, I'm surprised it took this long to uncover.
What are they waiting on?
Yeah, I mean, Emmanuel Clase was spiking pitches in the dirt, and we knew it immediately. They got 1,000 dudes over there, and who knows how long it's been going on. But It took them what seems like a while to catch 1,000 people illegally gambling on their own sport.
How much more evidence do you need? Okay, we got 600 guys in on this. Well, I'd really feel comfortable if we got a couple more hundred, 1,000 players. Good grief! News out of Turkey there. Meanwhile, south of Turkey, way south in the land down under. This is a story for our good friend and longtime Main Street Sports Today colleague or friend of the show, Matt Murdoch. He's going to love this one. Hundreds of bagpipers have claimed a new world record, which is a sentence I never thought I would say out loud. But hundreds of bagpipers have claimed a new world record on Wednesday. Earlier today, I guess they're ahead of us, but these bagpipers, Calvin, belted out AC/DC's Rock and Roll Classic. It's a long way to the top. Licensing and trademark regulations, unfortunately, prohibit us from even daring to play this, but so kudos to producer Mark for keeping us on the air here. But billed as the Great Melbourne Bagpipe Bash, the eclectic performance took place in their Federation Square, which was the scene of AC/DC 76 film clip where they played the hit on the back of a flatbed truck with music blaring through the speakers as they kind of weaved through downtown. So we go from thousands of illegal bettors in Turkey to hundreds of AC/DC bagpipers. It's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll south in the land down under there, Calvin.
Yeah, I'm a big AC/DC fan. I'm just not sure how well it would sound on the bagpipes. You know, anytime I've ever heard a bagpipe, it doesn't sound awful, but it's not the number one thing I would choose to listen to if I had the choice. So, I mean, kudos to them, but I'm just not sure how well that would sound coming through the bagpipes.
Yeah, there is a little bit of, if I recall correctly, there is a little bit of a bagpipe kind of solo in that song, but it sounds like they played the full shebang, and that's where I'm like you, Calvin. I don't know necessarily how well that would sound, but interesting stuff down there, and I will be hitting up Spotify the moment we get off this show now to tune into some AC/DC. Calvin, did you get your phone out last night and see the Northern Lights by chance?
I did. Me and my girlfriend went to dinner last night and saw somebody else post a picture of it out there in the middle of Clarksville. So we got home and tested it out, and it actually worked.
That's not your picture, I don't think, that producer Mark is showing. That is certainly not the picture that I saw last night in downtown Nashville, but was able to see him. I feel like I'm cheating a little bit, Calvin, by seeing these things only on night mode on the phone. Still have yet to see them in all their glory in person. But yes, solar storms bringing colorful auroras to unexpected places. Could even be more to come. This is one of the cool things on social media. Yeah, it's a photo, and yeah, you're using night mode, but seeing people sharing photos. My mom sent me one from Pulaski, an hour south of here. I mean, we're talking crazy reach, and it sounds like you might be able to see some more. Hopefully we get a good, clear night sky. I don't know if this will stick around till Friday, Calvin, but if it does, could you imagine the views we could possibly get for some of them high school football games on Friday night?
Yeah, that would be really cool, especially if we didn't have to get our phones out and turn it on night mode and look through the camera to see it.
Yeah, it would be nice. I'm just visualizing, Sycamore, the little 4 seed that could going on the road and maybe knocking off Covington. Then we got this cool picture of the Northern Lights in the background. A boy can dream, I suppose. Speaking of boys, a young cotton top tamarin monkey has been born at the Minnesota Zoo. I don't know what a cotton top monkey looks like. I don't know what a tamarin monkey really is. So I'm hoping producer Mark's got a good picture for us. But the one I saw earlier is flat out adorable. A Minnesota zoo has announced the birth of a cotton. Oh yeah. Oh man, that's as precious as it gets. But a Minnesota zoo announced the birth of this cotton top tamarin, a critically endangered species that is native to the tropical forests of Colombia. Why in the world it is being in captivity in Minnesota, I'm not really sure. But it's flat out cool. I'll tell you that much. You get a little inspiration coming from here.
Yeah, it looks cool, but it looks just dangerous enough to make me want to stay away.
Yeah, I've seen Outbreak one too many times. I ain't messing with that monkey there. So that's Wild and Wacky Wednesday, folks. Good stuff stuff on the show today. Thanks to producer Mark Rogers. Thanks to Calvin White. I've been Wade Neely saying so long. Mo and David on the program on Thursday. It'll be Throwback Thursday. We will see you then. Thank you for tuning in. Main Street Sports Today, presented by TOA of Columbia.